Fasco Central Vac, kind of one of those Me Too brands that Fasco is actually still in business. They're in North Carolina making lots of small electric motors for example, the draft inducer motor on your furnace or your water heater. That's quite likely to be a Fasco product. So they're making things for industry to be used in other products. So like Goodman, the furnace manufacturer, will buy from Fasco. But at one point, they were selling more home products directly with the Fasco label on them. These would have been sold through distributors. And you can see they, at one point, this is a 1980s brochure, they had a whole line of medicine cabinets and bathroom hardware and doorbells and intercom systems. I think they were going after NuTone's market, same kind of idea. And of course, they had their built-in vacuum. It's actually quite similar to Broan, another manufacturer that made just all kinds of stuff for the home. And they, of course, later merged with NuTone. But these, I have three examples here of their top-of-the-line unit, their 852 Svdm. And that was two motors in series with a permanent cloth filter. And these units are from 1985. 1989, this one's identical, so I've just taken it apart so we can look at it a little closer. And then 1995, and this would be a very late Fasco unit. I don't know how long they produced vacuums, but it can't be much later than 95. And even though this is the same model, you can see on this latest version, they have made the motor housing shorter. They have done away with the sound insulation little chimneys for the cooling air, and the tops of the motors are just right there. And we have a tangential intake on the side, but this is actually just screwed onto the enclosure. This does not communicate directly with this doesn't extend directly from the motor itself. This is just on the case. So these are two peripheral discharge bypass motors, and we'll get a closer look at that in here, because usually on a dual motor system, if you see two motors that are on the same height with each other, usually that indicates parallel motors. They're both bolted down to the filtration chamber, and they're both sucking air in parallel, giving you more airflow, the same water lift as if you had only one motor. But in this case, Fasco made them in series by this arrangement in here. So this is the side that would be normally clamped onto the top of the filtration chamber. So the clean side of the filter, which you can see is not totally clean, but the mostly filtered air is coming through here. And there would have been a hole in that chamber that communicated with this. The gasket sealed around here. And then this motor sucks in, blows out over here. This is a peripheral discharge motor, so you've got the exhaust like that. And then this air found its way into this motor. See this little bracket here? That prevented this motor intake from sucking down to the shell, even though there was no gasket on it. So this was just pulling air from this space around here, which is getting its air supply from the first motor. So now from here, we've got that second motor to boost the water lift. It's not adding any airflow, but it's increasing the maximum sealed vacuum of the system. And that is the motor that exhausts through the exhaust pipe here. So interesting design, kind of cool, worked well. Your series motor units with their extra water lift could make sense at a time when the hoses were so restrictive. When you're designing a system around an 1.25 inch wire reinforced hose, it doesn't matter if your power unit can produce 200 CFM. You're not going to get anywhere close to that through the hose. So build up your water lift. And so this design would have made sense, just like Broan and NuTone did it, among others. This is the inside of the filtration chamber on the Fasco. And you can see it's cloth filter, very Broan-like. Same diameter. I think it's about a 14-inch diameter can. Fasco's always had dual intakes, which is kind of a nice installer flexibility feature. So you have your utility inlet, which you would stick in one side, and then you'd have your piping connection to the house, which you would stick in the other side through these rubber grommets, and your dirt would just go straight in here. So Obviously this would be inverted on the wall, and your machine, when it was operating, the dust would collect on the filter, and then the weight in the filter, that beanbag pouch, this actually feels like washers in here, would cause the filter to sink and shed most of that dust back into the bucket, which you would then empty. Well, this filter uniquely has a gasket sewn in it, which was their attempt to make it seal better to the canister. You can see I don't see that was actually very much more effective than just having the plain steel band that everybody else uses for their permanent cloth filter. But the problem is, this filter isn't made anymore, so what do? I would say by now any Fasco unit that's still around is going to be nearing the end of its life. The motors are going to be wearing out, so they're candidates for replacement, and that's how we got all these. These were all traded in. But if you just want to address the filter situation and keep your machine for now, what you can do, if you don't use your utility inlet, then you have the easy option of getting this is a synthetic version of a NuTone central vac bag. NuTone bags use a 2-inch collar, and they've got these little perforations that allow the collar to slide over a larger pipe diameter. So you can just push this right on here and it'll kind of stay. Not great. But if you add any fitting, like this one's a 45, you add a 45 to that, or a 90 or whatever, now this gives you something just a little fatter that you can push this bag onto. Now that's on far enough, it's not going to go anywhere, and now the dirt goes into here, and your filter, you'll want to take another vacuum and clean this up inside here, which is easier said than done upside down underneath the thing. But now your dirt goes into the bag. You change the bag when it's full a couple times a year, and if your filter has a hole in it, it doesn't matter anymore. But that does not address your utility inlet. So if you want to use this, like in the garage, for example, you could plumb in like a 3-way T-fitting from here to here and connect them with a single bag adapter. Of course, those 3-way T-fittings are kind of evil. Or you could simply add an external inlet valve to the line coming from the rest of the piping in the house. So that's your way to get around that. But anyway, Fasco Master Vacs, I don't know how much of this literature I've already shared, but you can see they gave you all the info you needed to plan out the system and figure out the number of inlets. Nice Eureka tools at the time. These probably were no longer available by 95 when they made that unit. This Fasco for a while was being sold, or at least, I don't know if this company Spartan just had Fasco build their units, or if this was another brand that was sort of owned and managed by Fasco, like a different distribution channel. But you could buy a Fasco unit as a Spartan housekeeper for some period of time. And Fayetteville, North Carolina, so that's Fasco's headquarters, and this is from 1990. Another company that used the housekeeper name was Rittenhouse. They called their central vacs the housekeeper. But Rittenhouse units were built by Beam. It was a Beam with a bag in it. So it was like if you handed Beam a NuTone central vac and said, make me this, that was what Rittenhouse used for their housekeeper machine. But that logo is very similar, that font for housekeeper. So there might be some connection there too. Anyway, Fasco had several different models. You can see this manual applies to 5 models. And the 853 would have been the most common single motor machine with pretty abysmal performance. That was one through flow little motor. Like if you took a Kenmore canister vacuum and took the motor out of it, stuck it in a central vac, that's what that was. And then your dual motor machines, 851DM, had 2 smaller peripheral discharge bypass motors. And here's your maximum specs. And then your 852 Svdm had 2 larger peripheral bypass motors, still 5.7-inch 2-stage, but they're high efficiency model. and these were the specs. So you still couldn't get over 100 CFM, but like I was saying, when you're using hoses like these, you weren't going to be able to use too much CFM anyway. You weren't going to get that airflow at the end of the hose no matter what you did. So anyway, just a quick look at Fasco units. This one's plugged in. I can turn it on. Anyway, that's that. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. As always, thank you for watching.